The twin suns of Valora burned high over the great arena, painting the silver sands in shades of red and gold. Thousands of alien voices filled the air, cheering, chanting, roaring the name of their champion. Vekra of the Iron Scales, the most feared warrior of her kind. Her armor gleamed like molten stone, her sharp eyes glowing with arrogance and fire. Vekra raised her blade proud and unshaken. Around her lay a circle of defeated fighters, each one male, each one humiliated. She had crushed them all without mercy. "Another one?" she called, her deep voice echoing across the arena. "Where are the brave men now? Have you all run back to your nests?" The crowd laughed with her. They loved her pride. To them she was strength made flesh. To her, men, especially human men, were weak creatures, all talk, no fight. High above, the arena announcer's voice boomed through the loudspeakers. "The champion Vekra demands another challenger. Who among the brave will step forward?" For a long moment there was silence. Then slowly the great steel doors creaked open. A single figure walked out. Not an alien warrior, not a beast or a cyborg, but a human. He wore no armor, no glowing tattoos, no heavy weapons. Just a simple gray combat suit covered in dust. His hair was short, his face calm. The scars on his arms told stories of past battles, but his eyes were steady, too steady for someone about to die. The crowd fell into confusion. Some laughed, others booed. "A human?" someone shouted. "Send him back to Earth before he gets hurt." Vekra tilted her head, smiling with cruel amusement. "You must be lost, little man. This is no place for your kind." The human didn't answer. He simply stopped 10 steps away from her and looked her straight in the eye. His name was Ethan Cole, a combat veteran who had seen too many wars, too much pain. He had come to this arena not for fame, but for a reason only he knew. Vekra lowered her blade and chuckled. "You'll regret this. Humans talk of bravery but bleed faster than anyone." Ethan finally spoke, his voice calm and low. "Then let's see if your strength is more than just noise." The crowd gasped. An alien referee raised his clawed hand. "Begin!" Vekra moved first. Her speed was blinding. Each strike a flash of light, each swing a sound of thunder. The ground shook under her power. Ethan dodged, weaving left and right, his steps controlled and precise. He never attacked, only moved, studied, waited. "You run well," Vekra taunted, swinging again. "Is that how humans fight? By running?" Still, Ethan said nothing. His eyes tracked every motion of her body, the shift in her shoulders, the weight in her step, the way her balance tilted when she struck. The crowd grew restless. "They wanted blood. Fight, human," someone yelled. "Stop dancing and die like a warrior." Vekra lunged again, both blades spinning in a deadly arc. This time, Ethan didn't move away. He stepped forward, a whisper of motion so fast the eye could barely follow. His hand caught her wrist. His body turned. One clean movement, controlled, efficient, perfect. The next instant, Vekra was flat on the ground. Her blades clattered across the sand. The entire arena froze. No one understood what had happened. One moment, the alien warrior stood unchallenged. The next, she lay defeated in a single move. Vekra blinked up at the sky, her breath sharp and heavy. Her mind couldn't process it. "Impossible," she muttered. "No one moves like that." Ethan stepped back, giving her space. He didn't gloat, didn't smile. He just looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Are you hurt?" he asked quietly. She pushed herself up, furious. "Don't mock me." He shook his head. "I'm not mocking you." For the first time, the crowd was silent. The champion they had worshipped was speechless. The human who looked weak had done what no alien had ever done, defeated Vekra with one calm, simple move. The announcer hesitated, unsure how to even speak. "Winner, Ethan Cole, the human." Boos and murmurs rippled through the arena. Some shouted that it was luck, others called it a trick, but deep down everyone had seen it, the strength behind the human's calm. Vekra's pride burned hotter than the suns above. She pointed her blade at him once more, her voice trembling with rage. "You think this is over? Tomorrow you'll face me again, no tricks, no mercy." Ethan turned to leave, stopping only for a moment. He looked over his shoulder and said, "Then tomorrow, learn something before you fight." He walked out of the arena, his shadow long and silent. The alien crowd whispered in disbelief. Vekra stood in the dust, her pride shattered, her mind spinning. For the first time in her life, she felt something she had never known before. Doubt. The suns dipped low, casting long shadows across the arena. The greatest warrior of Valora had been defeated, and a quiet human had walked away without even raising his voice. The galaxy would remember this day, not as the fall of Vekra, but as the moment humanity showed what true strength looked like. The next morning, the great arena of Valora was louder than ever. Alien crowds from every colony had come to witness the impossible rematch. Word had spread across the system. The unbeatable warrior Vekra was defeated by a single human strike. Every spectator wanted to see if it had been luck or something more. Vekra stood in the center of the arena, her scaled armor glistening in the sunlight. Her expression was carved with rage and shame. She had not slept all night. In her mind, she replayed the same moment again and again, the instant when the human's hand caught her wrist, and her body hit the sand before she even realized what happened. She had sworn that today, things would be different. The crowd erupted as the metal doors opened again. Ethan Cole stepped out same as before. No armor, no weapon, no expression. He walked with the calm of a man who already knew how this would end. Vekra grinned sharply. "You came back," she said. "Good. This time I'll make you bow." Ethan simply replied, "I'm not here to bow or to boast. I'm here to fight clean." Her claws flexed around her blade. "Then prepare to fall, human." The arena trembled as the referee raised his hand. "Begin!" Vekra launched forward like a storm. Her speed was faster than before. She swung with fury, her weapon slicing through the air with burning trails. Ethan blocked and turned, using his body to redirect her energy instead of resisting it. Every move was effortless, as if he had already predicted where she'd strike next. Vekra's frustration grew. She attacked harder, faster, her movements wild and heavy. Ethan stayed calm, letting her exhaust herself. The crowd watched in disbelief. The alien warrior was fighting like a beast, but the human moved like wind and water. Finally, she leapt high, her blade glowing blue, ready to crush him in one final downward slash. Ethan waited, still as stone. Then just before her weapon hit, he stepped aside, and only one step, and struck with his open hand. The sound was sharp, almost like thunder cracking the air. Vekra fell again. Hard. The arena went silent once more. The crowd stared in shock. It had happened again. A single move, a single moment, and the mighty warrior lay defeated. Vekra's vision blurred. Her weapon slipped from her fingers. As she gasped, Ethan's shadow fell over her. He extended a hand. "You rely on power," he said softly. "But power means nothing without balance." She slapped his hand away, humiliated. "Don't dare lecture me, human." Ethan didn't argue. He simply turned and began to walk away. But before he could leave, she shouted after him. "Wait, how?" "What did you do?" He stopped but didn't turn back. "I did nothing," he said. "You beat yourself." The words hit harder than any strike. Vekra sat in the dust, chest heaving, pride bleeding. The crowd didn't cheer this time. They watched in silence, confused and restless. Some aliens whispered that maybe the human had cheated. Others said he used ancient magic. But a very few, saw the truth. They saw a fighter who had mastered something deeper than strength. As Ethan left the arena, the alien announcer hesitated before speaking. "Winner, once again, Ethan Cole of Earth." Vekra's claws dug into the ground. She couldn't accept it, not yet. Not until she understood. When night fell, the arena emptied, but Vekra remained. The sand around her still carried the marks of the fight. She walked the same path she had taken during the battle, repeating every move in slow motion, trying to find the mistake. She swung, blocked, twisted, fell, over and over again. But no matter how many times she replayed it, she couldn't see how he'd beaten her. "Balance," she whispered, recalling his word. What does that mean to a warrior? Above, the stars shimmered over Valora. Somewhere beyond those stars was Earth, the planet of the man who had humiliated her. For the first time in her life, she felt something strange in her chest. Not anger, not pride, but curiosity. Who was this human? Where did his calm come from? She clenched her fists, fire in her eyes once again. "Tomorrow, Ethan Cole," she murmured. "I'll make you show me everything you know." The twin suns began to rise again over the city, and the galaxy waited for their next encounter, not knowing that the bond between the proud alien warrior and the calm human had already begun to form in silence. When dawn broke over Valora, the air itself felt charged. The entire city was alive with noise, whispers, arguments, laughter. Everyone was talking about the same thing. A human had beaten Vekra, the Iron Warrior, not once but twice. For many, it was unthinkable. For others, it was thrilling. But for Vekra, it was torment. Inside her private chamber, she sat alone. Her armor was still lying in the corner, dented and dusty from the last battle. She stared at her reflection in the mirror. Eyes fierce, jaw tight, pride cracked like shattered glass. No one had ever defeated her before. No one had ever made her fall with such little effort. And no one had ever looked at her, and after beating her, with pity instead of triumph. Balance, she whispered again, repeating the human's word. He said, I beat myself. Her fists clenched. She didn't understand it. She was faster, stronger, trained since childhood to kill without hesitation. Humans were supposed to be weak, fragile, emotional. But that man, Ethan Cole, he didn't move like a man who feared death. He moved like he understood it. Outside, the city was restless. Alien news drones hovered above the streets, showing replays of the fight on every glowing screen. Over and over, the same moment, Vekra falling, Ethan stepping aside like a quiet storm. Some citizens mocked her. Others defended her honor. But one thing was certain. The name Ethan Cole had become known across the planet. By midday, she couldn't stand the noise anymore. She needed to see him again, not to fight, but to understand. When she arrived at the human training compound near the lower ring of the city, she found Ethan alone. He was sitting on the ground, cleaning his gloves, calm as always. Vekra stood at the doorway, arms crossed. You move like no one I've ever seen, she said coldly. What are you hiding, human? He looked up, his expression neutral. I'm hiding nothing, she stepped closer. You defeated me twice with no weapons, no armor, and no fear. That's not normal. Explain it. Ethan put down his gloves and stood. He was taller than she expected, though still smaller than her kind. His voice was quiet but steady. You fight for applause. I fight because I must. That's the difference, Vekra frowned. You think I fight for glory? I think you fight to prove something, Ethan said. I used to fight like that too, before I learned that pride doesn't save lives. Her glare softened slightly, curiosity mixing with confusion. And what does? He looked her straight in the eyes. Control, purpose, knowing when to strike, and when to stop. For a long time, Vekra didn't reply. She had never heard anyone speak of combat like that. To her people, war was honor, not wisdom. Yet, standing before this human, she could feel something different, a depth that unsettled her. Finally, she crossed her arms again. You talk like an old monk, not a soldier. He smiled faintly. I've been both. Before she could respond, a voice crackled over the city intercom. Attention citizens, a third match between champion Vekra and human Ethan Cole has been scheduled for tomorrow at high noon. Vekra's jaw tightened. She hadn't agreed to it, but it didn't matter. Her people demanded it. Ethan didn't flinch. They want blood again, he said. They'll get a fight, Vekra replied. But this time I won't lose. He tilted his head slightly. Maybe you'll win. Maybe you'll understand. Her tail flicked behind her in irritation, but something about his calm tone froze her anger. For the first time in her life, she didn't just want to defeat her opponent. She wanted to learn what made him so unshakable. That night, she returned to the empty arena. The sand still carried the prints of their battle. Under the pale light of Valora's moons, she moved through her stances again, slower now, thoughtful. She began to notice small things she had ignored before, how her rage made her strikes heavy, how her pride made her blind to openings, how her balance shifted when emotion ruled her mind. Maybe that was what the human meant. Maybe strength wasn't only in power, but in stillness. For the first time, Vekra felt something new inside her, respect. As the night wind swept over the arena, she looked toward the human district's faint lights in the distance. Tomorrow, she whispered, you'll see a different warrior. Ethan, in his small quarters across the city, sat quietly in meditation. His thoughts were steady, his breathing even. When the same night breeze touched his window, he opened his eyes slightly and smiled. He knew she would return stronger, and that was exactly what he wanted, because sometimes the greatest victories are not won through domination, but through awakening the warrior within another. The night before the third duel, Vekra stood on the balcony of her tower, watching the twin moons rise over the glowing city. Her body was strong, but her heart was restless. The laughter of the crowd still echoed in her head, the sound of mockery, disbelief, and shame. She had been their hero, their champion, the symbol of alien pride, but now they whispered behind her back, beaten by a human. She closed her claws around the railing until the metal bent beneath her grip. "I will not be a joke," she growled. Yet no matter how hard she tried to fill her heart with anger, doubt kept creeping in. It whispered in her mind like a quiet wind. What if he's right? What if power alone isn't enough? Her mind replayed Ethan's movements, his calm steps, the way his eyes never wavered, the softness of his voice when he said, "You beat yourself." Those words cut deeper than any blade. In the training hall below, her squad of alien warriors practiced late into the night. Their heavy blades crashed, sparks flying with every hit. When Vekra entered, silence fell instantly. Every soldier bowed. "Continue," she ordered. They obeyed, swinging their weapons with fierce precision. But when Vekra tried to join them, her rhythm faltered. Her strikes were powerful but unbalanced. Her breath grew heavy too soon. Her body fought perfectly, but her mind was at war with itself. Her second-in-command, a tall alien named Rethar, watched quietly. "You are distracted, Commander," he said. Vekra didn't look at him. "I'm focused. You're shaken," he replied. By that human, her glare was sharp. "You dare—" "I only speak what everyone sees," Rethar said calmly. "You fight harder, but he fights smarter. You burn your strength fast. He uses yours against you. That's not weakness, that's control." Vekra froze. The word echoed again, control. The same thing Ethan had said. She dismissed her warriors with a wave. When they were gone, she stood alone in the dim hall, staring at the reflection of her own face in her blade. "Control," she whispered. "Balance. Purpose. All human tricks." But even she didn't believe that anymore. Hours later, unable to rest, she walked to the edge of the arena. The stadium was empty, ghostly in the moonlight. She stepped into the center where she had fallen twice before and knelt down. The sand was cool beneath her hands. She closed her eyes, breathing slowly, trying to remember how the human had moved. She mimicked his steps, slow, deliberate, patient. It felt unnatural to her. Every fiber of her being wanted to strike fast, to dominate, to crush. But she forced herself to slow down. She let her muscles relax, let her mind clear. And then, for the first time, she felt something strange, a sense of stillness, of awareness. She could feel the ground beneath her feet, the air on her scales, the heartbeat inside her chest. "This is what he meant," she muttered. Balance. The realization shook her. It wasn't magic or trickery that had defeated her. It was mastery. Mastery over emotion, over ego, over fear. The next morning, when the suns rose, Valora's entire capital buzzed with excitement. The third match had drawn spectators from across the system. Merchants sold flags, food, and souvenirs. The streets pulsed with energy. But inside the arena, Vekra stood silent, calmer than she had ever been. Her armor gleamed, but her eyes were steady. The mocking pride was gone. In its place was focus. Ethan stood opposite her, same as before. No armor, no weapons, just that quiet human composure. When he saw her, he nodded slightly. "You look different today." "I am," she said simply. He gave a faint smile. "Then maybe today you won't fight yourself." The referee raised his hand. The crowd roared. And as the signal echoed through the arena, Vekra didn't rush forward this time. She stepped slowly, watching, breathing, grounded. Ethan mirrored her pace. Both warriors circled each other, calm, patient, aware. To the spectators, it looked like stillness. But between them, an invisible storm was forming. For the first time, Ethan saw something new in her. Understanding. And for the first time, Vekra realized she wasn't here to crush him. She was here to learn from him. The battle for pride had turned into a battle for truth. And this time it wasn't about who would win, but about who would change. The suns of Valora blazed high above the great arena, their golden light flashing across the massive steel walls. The stands were overflowing. Aliens from distant colonies, soldiers, nobles, traders, even off-world visitors who had come only to see one thing: the final duel between Vekra and the human named Ethan Cole. The noise was deafening. Banners rippled in the hot wind. Voices shouted from every direction and the smell of smoke and metal filled the air. This wasn't just a fight anymore. It had become a legend before it even began. In the preparation chamber, Vekra stood still. Her armor felt lighter than before. Her heartbeat was calm, steady. She could hear the echo of her own breathing. Slow, rhythmic, controlled. The anger that once burned inside her had cooled into focus. When the steel doors opened, she walked forward with her head high, not with arrogance, but with purpose. The crowd screamed her name, their voices echoing through the arena like thunder. But this time she didn't raise her blade or shout a challenge. She only looked at the other gate. It opened. Ethan stepped out just as calm and unreadable as ever. His suit was simple, his posture relaxed. No crowd, no noise, no flashing lights could shake him. His presence alone silenced part of the stadium. The referee's voice boomed. Today's match. No weapons, no enhancements, no armor advantage. Skill versus skill. Mind versus mind, Vekra nodded. Agreed. Ethan bowed his head slightly. Then let's begin. The bell rang. Vekra didn't rush this time. She moved in slowly, testing her steps, remembering his words, balance, control, purpose. Ethan circled her with quiet grace, his eyes watching every movement. Their bodies moved like shadows and fast, silent, perfectly measured. When she struck, it was no longer wild fury but disciplined power. Her hits had rhythm, her footwork was sharp. Ethan countered with smooth precision, using her strength to redirect her energy instead of blocking it. Each clash of movement sent ripples through the air. The crowd held its breath. Vekra's tail flicked, sweeping the sand. Ethan stepped back, too slow. For the first time, her strike landed, grazing his side. He stumbled slightly, catching his balance. The arena roared. Vekra didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply adjusted her stance and whispered, "Better." Ethan grinned faintly. Much better. He came forward again, his movements fluid and unpredictable. The two fighters danced across the arena floor, a storm of motion and silence. Dust rose around them like mist. Each movement was a language, each strike a question, and each block an answer. Minutes passed like seconds. The match became something more than a fight. It was art, a conversation between two warriors who no longer hated or mocked each other but understood each other. Then, in one perfect instant, Ethan saw an opening. He stepped in, his hand brushing past her guard, aiming for her shoulder. The same technique that had defeated her twice before. But this time, Vekra didn't fall. She caught his wrist mid-motion, twisting lightly, using his own momentum to pull him forward. Their eyes met, human calm against alien fire. For a heartbeat, they both froze. Then she let go. Ethan straightened slowly, breathing hard, surprise flickering across his face. The crowd was silent again. No one understood what had just happened. "You could have thrown me," he said quietly. "I didn't need to," she replied. "I finally understand." He smiled faintly, nodding once. "Then you've already won." The referee hesitated, unsure how to declare victory. But both fighters knew. This battle wasn't about defeat or triumph anymore. It was about respect. Vekra stepped back, raising her hand toward Ethan. "You taught me more in 3 fights than a lifetime of war ever did." Ethan bowed his head. "And you reminded me why warriors fight. Not for pride, but for purpose." The crowd erupted into cheers. Not for a winner, but for both. The image of the proud alien warrior and the quiet human standing side by side burned into every spectator's memory. When the match ended, Vekra didn't return to her chambers. She walked beside Ethan as they left the arena together. The reporters shouted, flashes lit up, and questions poured from every direction, but Vekra didn't answer any of them. She simply said, "He's not my enemy. He's my teacher." That sentence spread through Valora faster than light. Across the galaxy, people began to talk not about the humiliation of a warrior, but the awakening of one. That night, under the stars, Vekra and Ethan stood on the training ground together once more. The arena was quiet now, the city asleep. Ethan handed her a simple wooden staff. "Tomorrow," he said, "we start again. Not as enemies." Vekra took the staff, her eyes reflecting the twin moons. "No," she replied softly, "as equals." Days passed after the legendary rematch, but the echoes of it still filled Valora's streets. Posters of Vekra and Ethan stood on every screen across the city. Children practiced the one move in the alleys, and warriors whispered the human's name like it was something sacred. But far from the noise of the crowd, deep within the empty training grounds, the real lesson had begun. Ethan and Vekra stood across from each other, surrounded by silence. The air was warm, and faint rays of morning light filtered through the high glass ceiling. There were no crowds now, no cheers, no enemies, just two warriors and the truth between them. Again, Ethan said calmly, his voice steady as he raised his hand in demonstration. Vekra's muscles tensed, but she nodded. She stepped forward, striking fast. Ethan blocked, his motion gentle, smooth, unshaken. "Stop," he said. "You're forcing your body again." She frowned. "I'm fighting," he shook his head. "You're fighting yourself. Listen to the movement, not to your anger." Vekra exhaled, letting her shoulders relax. "Humans always speak in riddles," she muttered. Ethan chuckled softly. "Maybe, but balance isn't a trick, it's a habit. You trained to destroy your opponent. I trained to understand mine." Vekra lowered her weapon and sat on the sand, her armor plates gleaming under the light. "We are raised to believe emotion fuels power," she said. "That anger sharpens strength." "It sharpens it," Ethan replied, "but it also blinds it." He sat opposite her, crossing his legs. "You saw what happened when you fought me with rage. You attacked faster than your mind could think. You gave me all your energy without realizing it. Strength without patience burns itself out." She stared at him for a long moment. "And you? You didn't burn?" He smiled faintly, looking down at his hands. "I burned once. Lost everything because I thought power would protect those I cared about. It didn't. That's when I learned that the strongest fighters are the calmest ones." For the first time, Vekra saw something human in him, sorrow, but also peace. She stood slowly, gripping her training staff. "Teach me then, human. Not how to strike, but how to control the storm." Ethan nodded. "Then we start not with movement, but stillness." Hours turned into days. Every morning they met before sunrise. Ethan guided her through slow breathing, balance drills, and awareness exercises. He showed her how to feel the ground beneath her feet, how to sense motion before it began, how to breathe through fear instead of resisting it. At first, Vekra hated it. The stillness felt useless. But soon she began to understand. Her movements became smoother, her reactions sharper, her strength more focused. When she trained with her soldiers again, they couldn't believe the change. Her strikes were faster yet quieter. Her stance, once full of fury, now flowed like water. She no longer fought to win. She fought to move perfectly. Rethar, her second in command, approached her one evening. "You fight like a different creature now," he said. "I learned from a different kind of warrior," she replied, her gaze lifting toward the human district's lights in the distance. One evening, after training, Ethan and Vekra stood at the arena's edge watching the sunset. The sky was painted orange and purple, and the city lights shimmered below. "Your people will never see me the same," Vekra said softly. "Maybe that's good," Ethan replied. "Change starts with discomfort." She smiled faintly. "You sound like an elder monk again." He laughed quietly. "And you sound less like a conqueror." There was a long pause. The warm wind carried the sounds of distant laughter, the hum of ships leaving the port. "You know," Vekra said, her voice almost gentle, "when I first saw you, I thought you were fragile. I thought breaking you would be easy." Ethan looked at her. "And now?" "Now I see that strength isn't about what you break," she said. "It's about what you endure." Ethan smiled, the corners of his mouth soft. "Then you've learned the hardest part." She looked back toward the city, her eyes glowing faintly under the fading suns. "No," she said. "The hardest part is unlearning everything I was taught." That night, as they trained beneath the moons, something unspoken grew between them. Respect, trust, perhaps even a quiet bond forged in pain and patience. For the first time in her life, Vekra didn't feel alone in her fight. And for Ethan, who had long carried his own ghosts, teaching her had begun to heal something within him too. As the last rays of light faded, Ethan lowered his staff and said, "Tomorrow's lesson won't be about fighting." Vekra raised an eyebrow. "Then what will it be?" He looked up at the stars and replied, "About what we're fighting for." The wind carried his words through the quiet arena, and Vekra knew the true battle had just begun. not against an enemy but within themselves. The days of training turned into weeks and Valora began to change. Where once crowds filled the arena for blood and pride, now they came to watch something new: harmony. Humans and aliens sparred side by side, learning from each other, sharing techniques and discipline. The echoes of the past battles between Vekra and Ethan had become lessons for all. But peace, like silence, never lasts long in a galaxy that thrives on conflict. One stormy night, alarms roared through the city. The sky turned crimson as energy blasts streaked across the horizon. A creature, massive, ancient, and furious, had broken free from the outer jungle territories. The alien beast known as Korath had scales like molten stone and eyes burning like suns. It crushed everything in its path, heading straight for the city center. Citizens screamed. Guards rushed to their posts. The arena of Valora, once a place for sport, became the final line of defense. Vekra stood at the balcony of the tower, watching the chaos below. Her instincts screamed for battle, but for the first time she didn't move out of rage. She moved with purpose. She turned toward the human training grounds. "Ethan," she called through the comms. "It's coming." His voice came through calmly. "Then it's time to see what we've learned." Within minutes, they met in the middle of the city. The air smelled of smoke and fear. The ground trembled with each step of the creature. Around them, soldiers prepared their weapons, but the two warriors walked past them without hesitation. The beast emerged, a mountain of muscle and armor. It roared, shattering glass and shaking the air itself. Its molten breath burned through buildings as the crowd fled in terror. Vekra's blade hummed to life. "We can't fight it head-on," she said. Ethan nodded. "Then we don't fight it head-on." The creature lunged, claws tearing through the ground. They split in opposite directions. Vekra struck from the side, her blade glowing bright, slashing deep into one of its limbs. The creature bellowed in pain, spinning toward her. Ethan sprinted along the crumbling walls, leaping from debris to debris, his movements fast but controlled. "Now," he shouted. Vekra jumped, landing on the beast's back, her claws digging into its thick scales. She swung her weapon down with all her strength. The strike flared like lightning. The beast shrieked, shaking violently. She lost her grip, thrown off balance. Before she could hit the ground, Ethan caught her arm, steadying her landing. She looked at him, breathless. "You're insane," he smiled faintly. "Balance, remember?" The beast roared again, slamming its tail toward them. They rolled apart as the tail smashed into the street, sending dust and fire through the air. The city lights flickered. They regrouped, standing shoulder to shoulder. Ethan's breathing was steady. "We end this together." Vekra's eyes burned with focus. Together they charged. Ethan moved first, drawing the beast's attention. His small figure was a blur between explosions of dust and fire. Vekra saw the pattern, his rhythm, and followed it perfectly. When the beast swung, Ethan slid under. When it turned, Vekra struck. Each movement was in sync, a dance between two worlds. Finally, as the creature reared up for a final strike, Ethan shouted, "Now, Vekra!" She leapt high into the air, every muscle in her body fueled by precision, not rage. She drove her blade deep into the beast's throat, a clean, final motion. The creature roared one last time before crashing to the ground, shaking the city like an earthquake. Silence followed. The flames dimmed. Vekra stood atop the fallen creature, her armor cracked and smoking, but her eyes steady. Ethan approached, his suit torn and dusty. He looked up at her, a faint smile on his face. "You did it." She jumped down, landing beside him. "No," she said quietly. "We did it." The soldiers around them cheered. The crowd that had once demanded blood now shouted their names in gratitude. The human and the alien, once enemies, had saved them all. Later, when the fires died and the stars returned, Vekra stood beside Ethan on the edge of the arena. The city lights shimmered below. "I understand now," she said softly. "Your one move, it wasn't strength. It was calm, it was heart." Ethan nodded, looking out at the quiet city. "Sometimes the strongest warriors are the ones who fight without hate." She smiled faintly. "Then I was blind for too long." He turned to her. "You can see clearly now." They stood in silence for a long time, the wind cool and gentle. Above them, the night sky stretched endlessly, stars glowing like distant fires. "Perhaps this is what balance truly means," she said. "Not peace, not war, but understanding." Ethan nodded. "And maybe that's what humanity has been trying to teach all along." Vekra looked at him, her expression softening. Then consider your lesson complete, teacher, he smiled. Lessons never end. And as the twin moons rose above Valora, two warriors, once divided by pride, now united by respect, watched the dawn of a new chapter. Not just for themselves, but for both their worlds. For in that single moment, the galaxy had learned one truth. Humanity's greatest strength was never power. It was heart.